Do not scroll past this moment, because I have deliberately orchestrated this exact intersection of time and space to intercept the overwhelming exhaustion that is currently breaking your spirit. I am speaking directly into the heavy, suffocating weariness that you have been carrying for so long, a silent burden that has woven itself so deeply into the fabric of your daily life that you have almost forgotten what it feels like to simply breathe without pain. You have been functioning on the absolute fumes of your own human endurance, carrying the expectations of everyone around you, while secretly feeling your own foundation crumbling beneath the weight of it all. I see you sitting there, watching this screen with eyes that are tired not just from lack of sleep, but from a profound, agonizing depletion of your very soul. I know how hard you have been trying to keep everything together, smiling through the ache, showing up for people who do not show up for you, and maintaining a facade of strength while your internal world feels like it is slowly bleeding out. You have spent so much time convincing the world that you are fine, acting as the pillar of support for your family, your friends, and your workplace, that no one even thinks to ask how much agony you are in when the doors are closed and you are finally alone in the dark. I know about those moments when you sit in your car for a few extra minutes before walking into your house or your workplace, desperately trying to summon just a fraction of energy to face another day of demands, wondering how much longer you can possibly keep this up before you completely shatter. This exhaustion you are feeling is not merely the result of a long work week or a temporary season of stress, but rather a deep, chronic draining of your vitality that has been going on for years. You feel as though you are constantly pouring water into a vessel that is fractured at the base, giving your love, your time, your finances, and your emotional currency to situations and people, only to find yourself entirely empty by the end of the day. You have tried to fix your own life, seeking out every possible human solution, reading every piece of advice, working harder, pushing yourself past your breaking point, and yet, despite all of your agonizing efforts, things have not gotten better. In fact, just like someone wandering through a desert chasing mirages, you have spent all that you have, exhausted every resource you possess, and somehow you feel worse, more isolated, and more desperately tired than when you first began to fight. I am not looking at you with disappointment, and I am certainly not angry with you for feeling so weak, because I never designed your fragile human frame to carry the immense, crushing weight of the world's anxieties on your own shoulders. The modern world has lied to you, whispering that your value is strictly tied to your relentless productivity, demanding that you hustle through your pain, ignore your wounds, and sacrifice your peace on the altar of temporary success. But I am the creator of your heart, the architect of your nervous system, and I am stepping into your reality right now to issue a divine command of rest, completely overriding the toxic pressures that have been driving you into the ground. You have been living in a constant state of survival, your mind racing a million miles an hour, constantly calculating how to pay the next bill, how to heal the broken relationship, how to protect your loved ones, and how to outrun the shadow of your past mistakes. That relentless mental spinning is a thief that comes in the night to steal the peace I have freely offered you, draining your spiritual reservoirs until you are left running on nothing but anxiety and fear. I see the invisible hemorrhage of your spirit, the slow, quiet leaking of your hope, as month after month passes by, and the prayers you have wept over seem to hit a brass ceiling and fall back down entirely unanswered. But I want you to listen to the cadence of my voice and allow the absolute truth of my presence to begin washing over the frantic, terrified parts of your mind, soothing the inflammation of your worried soul. You do not need to fight right now. You do not need to figure out the complex logistics of your future tomorrow, and you certainly do not need to prove your worth to me by demonstrating how much agony you can endure. I am stepping in to take the heavy, suffocating yoke off your neck, gently removing the armor you have worn for far too long, because the battle you are trying to fight with your own exhausted hands actually belongs entirely to me. Breathe in deeply, drawing the air slowly into your lungs, and realize that you are safely held within the perimeter of my unconditional love, a love that does not require you to be perfect, energetic, or flawlessly put together. I am wrapping my presence around you like a thick, warm blanket on a freezing night, shielding you from the relentless demands of a world that only knows how to take from you. Tonight, in this sacred and quiet space we are sharing, I am going to teach you how to stop bleeding out your energy, how to finally access the eternal reservoir of my strength, and how to reach out and touch the only source of healing that can instantly stop the hemorrhage of your soul. I want to take you back through the corridors of time to a dusty road in the ancient city of Capernaum, where a story is recorded in the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Mark that perfectly mirrors the exact dimensions of your current exhaustion. There was a woman who had been suffering from a severe hemorrhage, a relentless and uncontrollable flow of blood that had been draining the life out of her body for 12 agonizing years, waking up every single morning feeling weaker than the day before. For over a decade, she watched her hopes slowly deteriorate, living in a state of profound alienation because her medical condition made her ceremonially unclean, rendering her entirely untouchable and isolating her from the warmth of human embrace, the community of her peers, and the comfort of her own family. The scripture tells us a heartbreaking detail that resonates so incredibly deeply with your own modern struggles, noting that she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all the money she had, yet instead of getting better, she only grew worse. Can you feel the profound weight of her despair? The sheer tragedy of investing every ounce of her energy, her finances, and her fragile hope into human solutions that ultimately left her more depleted, bankrupt, and broken than when she first started her journey toward healing. She was a woman completely emptied of resources, physically fading away into a mere shadow of her former self, standing at the absolute end of her rope with nothing left to hold on to, which is the precise spiritual and emotional location where you find your own heart standing tonight. You know this devastating feeling all too intimately, because you too have spent your energy trying to fix the unfixable, seeking counsel, working harder, and desperately trying to mend situations that continue to drain your emotional bank account until there is absolutely nothing left in reserve. You have been walking around with an invisible wound, a chronic emotional and spiritual bleeding that nobody else can see, causing you to feel profoundly alienated and misunderstood even when you are standing in a room full of people who claim to know you and love you. The world has offered you countless remedies, whispering that if you just read another book, work another shift, numb the pain with distractions, or simply try a little harder, you will finally find the peace you are looking for. Yet you have found yourself sinking deeper into the mire of exhaustion, wondering if this agonizing weariness is simply the way your life will be forever. But in the midst of her ultimate depletion, when society had completely written her off and her own physical body was giving up the fight, she heard that I was passing through her town, and a quiet, desperate, incredibly stubborn spark of faith ignited within the suffocating darkness of her despair. She did not ask for a private audience. She did not wait for the conditions of her life to be perfect, and she did not let the massive, chaotic, pressing crowd of people standing between us deter her from her pursuit, because she said to herself with a conviction that defied all human logic that if she could merely touch the hem of my garment, she would be completely healed. Imagine the sheer willpower it took for this frail, exhausted, marginalized woman to push through a dense multitude of people, risking public shame and physical collapse, driven solely by the absolute belief that the solution to her 12 years of agony was walking just a few feet away from her outstretched hand. She had to push past the opinions of the crowd, just as you must now push past the loud, frantic voices of anxiety, the endless notifications on your screen, the harsh judgments of your critics, and the paralyzing doubts in your own mind that are trying to keep you isolated in your pain. And the very moment her trembling, exhausted fingers brushed against the fabric of my garment, the gospel records that the bleeding stopped immediately, instantly drying up a fountain of misery that a decade of human effort could not cure, while she felt within her own body that she was finally and completely freed from her suffering. At that exact, miraculous second, I stopped walking completely, ignoring the loud and chaotic pressing of the crowd that was surging around me from every side, because I felt power go out from my being, responding instantly to the silent, desperate faith of a soul that had absolutely nothing left to offer but her overwhelming need for grace. I did not rebuke her for interrupting my journey. I did not demand that she explain herself or justify her actions, nor did I shame her for her long and painful history. Instead, I turned around, looked her directly in the eyes, validating her existence, and spoke the words that I am now speaking directly over your exhausted life. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. This is not just a story from antiquity, my beloved child, but a living, breathing blueprint of the deliverance that is available to you in this exact moment, proving that your healing does not require you to have all the answers, abundant energy, or a perfect life, but simply the willingness to reach out through your exhaustion and touch the grace that I am holding out to you right now. Now that you have seen the desperate faith of that woman reaching out through the pressing crowd, I need to have a profoundly honest conversation with your weary soul, gently tearing down the false narratives you have constructed over the years, because the true root of your overwhelming exhaustion is not simply that you are working too hard, but rather that you have unknowingly taken upon yourself the impossible, soul-crushing responsibility of trying to be the savior in everyone else's life. You have been walking through this world absorbing the pain, the chaos, and the brokenness of the people around you, desperately trying to fix situations that are entirely out of your control, pouring the precious, limited oil of your own spirit into vessels that refuse to be healed, and wondering why you are left feeling so hollow and completely drained at the end of the day. You have carried the secret, arrogant burden of believing that if you do not step in, if you do not overfunction, if you do not sacrifice your own peace to manage the crises of your family, your friends, and your workplace, everything will immediately fall apart, carrying a weight that I never once placed upon your fragile shoulders. I need you to hear this eternal orthodox truth and let it penetrate the deepest layers of your anxious mind. There is only one savior of this world, and you are not him. The invisible hemorrhage of your spirit, that slow, agonizing bleeding of your vitality, is happening precisely because you are trying to heal the wounds of others, using your own human blood, your own limited energy, and your own finite wisdom, instead of allowing me to do the miraculous work that only divinity can accomplish. Every time you lose sleep agonizing over someone else's poor choices, every time you compromise your own boundaries to keep a toxic environment from collapsing, and every time you take responsibility for outcomes that are completely outside of your jurisdiction, you are reopening your own wounds, draining your life force to pay a debt that you do not even owe. Look at the woman from Capernaum again, realizing that her miraculous restoration did not begin when she finally found the perfect human physician, but rather it began at the exact moment she admitted her absolute bankruptcy, acknowledging that her own efforts were entirely insufficient to stop the hemorrhage of her life, and that she desperately needed an intervention from outside of her own humanity. I am confronting your relentless need for control tonight, because it is the very thing that is keeping you exhausted, blinding you to the reality that your weakness is not a character flaw, but rather the exact, necessary prerequisite for my divine strength to enter and transform your circumstances. You have been conditioned to believe that surrendering control means you have failed, that letting go of the reins makes you vulnerable to disaster. But in the spiritual reality of my kingdom, true surrender is the highest form of trust, the ultimate declaration that your Father is overwhelmingly capable of managing the universe without your frantic assistance. I am explicitly releasing you right now from the heavy, suffocating mandate of trying to control the outcome of every situation, breaking the unseen chains of perfectionism that have bound your wrists and made you believe that if you just worried a little bit more, you could somehow prevent the storms of life from hitting your shores. I want you to mentally gather up all the people you have been trying to fix, all the financial equations you cannot seem to balance, all the future scenarios that terrify you, and all the broken relationships you have been desperately trying to glue back together with your own exhausted hands. And I want you to deliberately hand them over to me. You are allowed to lay down the armor you have been wearing. You are allowed to stop fighting battles that do not belong to you. And you are allowed to step down from the exhausting pedestal of being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never breaks, because that pedestal is actually a prison that is slowly suffocating your spirit. Do you not see how deeply your self-reliance has separated you from the restful communion I desire to have with you, creating a barrier of anxiety that keeps you constantly striving, constantly proving yourself, and constantly running on the treadmill of human effort? I did not breathe the breath of life into your lungs so that you could spend your decades on Earth managing crises and acting as the emotional shock absorber for a broken world, but rather I created you to walk with me in the cool of the day, to experience the profound, unshakable peace of knowing that you are deeply loved, not for what you can produce or fix, but simply for who you are. The moment you stop trying to heal yourself and everyone around you with your own frantic efforts, the moment you finally exhale and allow your trembling hands to fall to your sides, is the exact fraction of a second that my healing virtue flows into your life, instantly drying up the fountain of your exhaustion, just as it dried up the hemorrhage of the woman who reached out to touch the hem of my garment. I am washing away the toxic guilt that the enemy has used to keep you running, the insidious lie that tells you that resting is a sin, that taking care of your own soul is selfish, and that you must constantly earn your right to exist by burning yourself out for others. Tonight marks a profound demarcation line in the spiritual architecture of your life, a holy boundary where you finally accept that you cannot outwork the grace I am freely offering, shifting your posture from a frantic, exhausted laborer trying to build their own salvation into a beloved, cherished child who is finally learning how to rest in the finished work of their Father. Listen to the steady, rhythmic sound of the heavy rain falling against the glass outside, and allow that sound to become a physical manifestation of my grace washing over the weary landscape of your life, carrying away the dust, the heat, and the accumulated exhaustion of the battles you have fought today. You have finally crossed the threshold into the sanctuary of my presence, a sacred and heavily guarded perimeter of divine peace, where the chaotic demands of the outside world are completely stripped of their authority, unable to reach you, touch you, or demand anything more from your depleted spirit. I want you to give your physical body absolute permission to realize that the emergency is officially over, acknowledging that you no longer need to be braced for impact, you no longer need to anticipate the next crisis, and you no longer need to hold yourself together with sheer, agonizing willpower. I want you to bring your attention to the space right behind your eyes, where all the frantic calculations, the endless future scenarios, and the loud, overlapping voices of your anxieties have been burning so brightly all day long. And I want you to give those thoughts permission to simply fade away into the quiet. Allow the heavy, exhausted muscles in your jaw, which have been clenched so tightly against the relentless pressures of the world, to finally soften and release, letting that warm, soothing wave of profound relaxation travel slowly down the back of your neck, untangling the knots of stress that have woven themselves deep into your flesh. You have been carrying the physical manifestation of your spiritual hemorrhage in your own body, locking the trauma of your disappointments into your shoulders. But as you listen to the unbroken cadence of my voice, I am commanding that tension to dissolve, melting away under the radiant, unshakable warmth of my eternal love. Feel the heavy iron band of anxiety that has been restricting your chest beginning to loosen, expanding outward and allowing you to take a deep, unobstructed breath of the air that I have purified just for you, pulling my supernatural peace into the very bottom of your lungs. Breathe in slowly, drawing in the absolute certainty that you are fiercely protected. And as you hold that breath for just a moment in the quiet stillness of this room, realize that you are completely enveloped in the very same power that instantly dried up the 12-year hemorrhage of the woman who touched my garment. And now, exhale gently, releasing the bitter arguments of yesterday, breathing out the toxic expectations of the people who misunderstood you, and pushing out the lingering residue of fear that has tried to convince you that tomorrow will be just as painful as today, letting it all evaporate into the shadows where it belongs. Let your arms become incredibly heavy, allowing your hands to rest open and empty by your sides, completely surrendering the illusion of control that has kept your knuckles white and your spirit drained, because you do not need to hold on to the steering wheel of your life when the creator of the universe is actively navigating your path. I am wrapping the heavy, comforting fabric of my presence around your shivering soul, covering you with a mantle of profound security that absorbs the lingering coldness of your anxiety, insulating you from the harsh, demanding winds of a society that only values you for what you can endlessly produce. You are allowed to be entirely fragile in this moment. You are allowed to be small. You are allowed to lay down the exhausting persona of the warrior who never bleeds, and you are allowed to simply sink into the vast oceanic depths of my grace without having to explain yourself, justify your feelings, or apologize for your tears. I see the tears that you have held back out of a false sense of bravery, the quiet weeping of a soul that has been stretched so far beyond its natural limits that it feels like gossamer thread about to snap, and I am collecting every single one of those tears, honoring the depth of your endurance and the sincerity of your struggles. But the bleeding has stopped, my beloved child. The invisible hemorrhage of your energy has been completely arrested by the touch of my hand, and the massive spiritual drain that has left you feeling so empty has been permanently sealed, allowing my living water to begin filling your reservoirs all over again. You are currently in the sacred space of recovery, a holy convalescence where the only task assigned to you by heaven is to remain entirely still, allowing the master physician to bind up the fractured pieces of your hope and pour the anointing oil of joy over the raw, exposed nerves of your exhausted mind. When you close your eyes tonight, you are not surrendering to defeat, nor are you merely escaping your reality, but rather you are engaging in the most profound and powerful act of spiritual warfare, declaring to the enemy and to the entire unseen realm that your Heavenly Father is completely capable of managing the universe, paying your debts, fighting your enemies, and aligning your destiny while you peacefully sleep. I am the watchman who never slumbers and never sleeps, standing guard over your home, standing over your fragile dreams, and standing over the minds of those you love, ensuring that no weapon formed against you in the darkness will ever be allowed to prosper, and no thief will ever be permitted to cross the threshold of this divine sanctuary. Let the sound of the rain continue to lull you deeper into this state of absolute surrender, washing away the false guilt that tells you that you have not done enough, the insidious lie that whispers that you are falling behind, and the terrifying illusion that you have somehow ruined the perfect plan I have ordained for your life. You are exactly where I need you to be, perfectly positioned in the hollow of my hand. And as the night stretches out its quiet wings over the earth, I am actively working in the invisible realms, shifting the circumstances of your tomorrow, so that when you finally awaken, you will step into a reality that has been miraculously prepared for your success. Now that the agonizing hemorrhage of your spirit has been miraculously sealed, and the heavy, exhausting drain on your soul has finally been brought to a complete halt, we must begin the beautiful, holy process of refilling the vast emptiness that those years of relentless striving have left behind. I do not merely stop the bleeding and then leave you empty, weak, and hollowed out, because my grace is never satisfied with merely pulling you back to the baseline of human survival. Rather, my nature is overwhelmingly generous, desiring to pour the thick, warm, golden oil of my spirit into every single fractured crevice of your life, until your vessel is overflowing with a vitality that you have never previously known. When I spoke to that exhausted, trembling woman in the Gospel of Mark, I did not just tell her that her physical bleeding had stopped, but I looked deeply into her eyes, breaking through her decades of isolation, and I called her daughter, deliberately restoring her stolen identity before commanding her to go in peace, a peace that in the original language is called shalom, which means absolute wholeness, where absolutely nothing is missing and nothing is broken. That is the exact, comprehensive wholeness that I am actively establishing within your life at this very moment, as the quiet hours of the night continue to unfold and the world outside your window remains perfectly still. I know that as you lay here, stripped of your armor and resting in my presence, a quiet sorrow sometimes tries to drift across your mind, a lingering grief over the time, the energy, and the years that you feel were completely stolen by your exhaustion, your trauma, and the people who took advantage of your relentless kindness. You look back at the calendar of your life and you mourn the seasons that were consumed by survival mode, wondering what you could have achieved, who you could have become, or where you would be standing right now if you had not been so violently drained by the invisible burdens you were carrying for so long, fearing that you are now hopelessly behind the timeline of your own destiny. But I want you to listen to the absolute authority of my voice as I completely shatter that illusion of lost time, because I am the sovereign architect of eternity, entirely unbound by the ticking of your earthly clocks, and I possess the miraculous ability to gather up the fragmented, wasted, and painful years of your past and transform them into a concentrated, explosive blessing for your immediate future. As the prophet Joel declared under the inspiration of my breath, I will repay you for the years that the swarming locust has eaten, compensating you so abundantly for your seasons of depletion that you will eventually look back and realize that your era of exhaustion was actually the incredibly deep, painful excavation of a foundation capable of holding the massive, unprecedented weight of glory that I am preparing to place upon your life. The energy that you thought was wasted on toxic situations was actually being used by my sovereign hand to forge within you a fierce, unshakable discernment, a profound, empathetic wisdom, and a spiritual resilience that you will desperately need in order to manage the vast resources, the vital relationships, and the elevated platforms that I am going to entrust to your stewardship in the days to come. Feel the atmosphere in the room shifting, becoming noticeably warmer and heavier with the undeniable weight of my presence, as I begin to pour a completely new supernatural energy into the exhausted, dormant places of your physical body and your weary mind. This is not the frantic, anxiety-driven adrenaline that you have been using to force your way through your days. nor is it the temporary, shallow stamina that the world offers through caffeine and sheer willpower, but rather it is the inexhaustible, quiet, oceanic power of my Holy Spirit, rising up from the deepest wells of your being, like a fresh, clear spring, breaking through dry, hardened soil. I am rehydrating your imagination, washing away the cynical, exhausted perspectives that have made you believe that your best days are permanently behind you, and I am painting vibrant, breathtaking new visions upon the canvas of your mind, showing you glimpses of a future that is so saturated with my favor, so devoid of the toxic struggles of your past, that you will hardly be able to comprehend the magnitude of the shift. I am taking you by the hand and leading you into the secret room of my presence, a hidden, fortified sanctuary within your own soul, where the noise of the critics cannot reach, where the demands of your creditors are entirely silenced, and where the expectations of a frantic world are completely locked out. In this secret room, you do not have to perform, you do not have to earn your keep, you do not have to prove your intelligence, and you do not have to justify your exhaustion, because in this holy space, you are completely known, deeply understood, and relentlessly loved simply because you are my child, breathed into existence by my own design. From this night forward, I am rewiring your spiritual and psychological reflexes so that whenever the chaos of the world attempts to overwhelm you again, whenever a crisis arises, or a person demands more than you are capable of giving, you will not default to your old patterns of frantic, draining overfunctioning, but instead, you will instantly retreat into this secret room, anchoring your mind in my peace before you take a single step forward. Let the warm, steady rhythm of your breathing sync with the eternal, unhurried heartbeat of heaven, recognizing that you are being fundamentally rebuilt from the inside out while you rest, receiving a divine compensation that will make your coming morning infinitely brighter, stronger, and more joyously alive than you could ever possibly orchestrate on your own. You are filling up, my beloved. The deep ravines of your soul are being flooded with crystal clear waters of grace. The broken vessels are being perfectly mended with threads of pure gold, and the exhaustion that defined your yesterday is rapidly dissolving into the boundless, radiant vitality of my eternal love. As you lie here, deeply enveloped in the radiant warmth of my presence and feeling the undeniable, comforting heaviness that has finally settled over your physical body, I am actively constructing an impenetrable fortress of spiritual light all around the perimeter of your mind, your home, and everything you hold dear. You have officially entered into the shadow of the Almighty, that sacred and unbreachable covering described in the 91st Psalm, a holy dimension where the chaotic storms of the world are completely neutralized and the terrifying noise of the enemy is entirely silenced, allowing your nervous system to experience the profound, uninterrupted rest that comes from knowing that the Creator of the universe is personally standing guard at the door of your life. I want you to feel the absolute security of this moment, sinking deeper and deeper into the mattress beneath you, letting the material world fade into the background as you realize that you are completely insulated from the demands of tomorrow, shielded from the regrets of yesterday, and hidden safely beneath the majestic wings of a Father who never slumbers and never sleeps. For far too long, the hours of the night have been a battleground for your mind, a dark canvas where your deepest insecurities, your unresolved trauma, and your financial terrors have painted horrific scenarios, causing you to wake up with a racing heart and a soul that feels even more exhausted than when you first closed your eyes. But tonight, I am stepping directly into the realm of your subconscious, laying my hands upon the intricate, beautiful pathways of your sleeping brain, and I am permanently evicting the spirits of night terror, chronic anxiety, and subconscious dread that have tried to make a home in your thoughts. I am washing your mind with the pure, crystal-clear water of my word, establishing a divine filtration system over your imagination so that absolutely nothing is permitted to enter your dreamscape unless it carries the vibration of my peace, the assurance of my love, and the absolute certainty of your restored destiny. You do not have to exert a single ounce of effort to maintain this protection, because the defense of your soul is not dependent upon your human vigilance, but rather it is guaranteed by the shed blood of my Son and the overwhelming, terrifying power of my holy angels, whom I have dispatched in legions to form a towering wall of fire around your dwelling place tonight. Imagine them standing shoulder to shoulder in the invisible realm, beings of immense blinding light and unimaginable strength, holding the line against any force of darkness that would dare attempt to cross the threshold of your sanctuary. rendering every single weapon formed against you completely powerless and obsolete before it can even reach your shores. You are allowed to completely let go of your defense mechanisms, releasing the hypervigilance that has kept your muscles tight and your breathing shallow, because you are finally dwelling in a space where nothing is required of you except your willing surrender to the current of my eternal grace. Let the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing pull you further down into this ocean of tranquility, feeling the gentle rhythmic rise and fall of your chest as a physical testament to the fact that you are entirely sustained by my breath, perfectly held in a universe that I am carefully managing down to the very last detail. I am taking the broken, exhausted fragments of your heart and carefully binding them together with threads of pure divine light, healing the deep, invisible cellular damage that years of chronic stress have inflicted upon your body, and instructing your physical organs to regenerate, to repair, and to align themselves with the supernatural wholeness of my kingdom. The same miraculous power that instantly dried up the 12-year hemorrhage of the woman in the crowd is currently circulating through your bloodstream, lowering your heart rate, releasing the stored trauma from your tissues, and washing away the bitter residue of the betrayals and disappointments that you have carried for so many years. I want you to understand that while you are peacefully sleeping, entirely unaware of the world around you, I am actively working on your behalf in the corridors of human power, shifting the hearts of decision-makers, untangling the complex financial webs that have kept you bound, and preparing a completely cleared, illuminated path for you to walk upon when the sun finally rises. You have spent so much time believing the lie that if you are not constantly worrying, if you are not endlessly strategizing, everything will fall apart. But I am proving to you tonight that my favor can accomplish more in a single second of your surrendered sleep than you could ever possibly achieve in a decade of your most frantic, exhausting, and desperate human labor. The heavy, suffocating yoke of self-reliance is completely broken off your neck, and it is being replaced by the incredibly light, joy-filled burden of walking alongside me, knowing that you are deeply, unconditionally loved, not for the problems you can solve or the productivity you can generate, but simply because you are the breathtaking masterpiece of my creation. Drift deeper now, letting my voice become the only reality you are tethered to, a steady, unwavering anchor in the vast, beautiful expanse of this holy night, while the remaining echoes of your exhaustion continue to dissolve into the absolute nothingness from which they came. There is no rush, there is no deadline, there is no emergency waiting for you in the shadows, because I have already stepped into your tomorrow. I have already paved the way, and I am currently standing there waiting for you with a future that is overflowing with hope, provision, and a devastatingly beautiful peace. You are entirely safe, you are profoundly cherished, and you are completely, miraculously whole, resting in the exact center of my will, where the storms cannot reach you, the enemy cannot touch you, and the exhaustion of your past is permanently swallowed up by the infinite, radiant vitality of my love. The world has fallen completely and beautifully silent around you, and as you drift deeper into the weightless, warm embrace of my eternal presence, I want you to realize that the frantic, exhausting chapter of your life has officially been brought to a close. You are no longer the weary traveler desperately pushing through the crushing crowds just to find a momentary drop of relief. Nor are you the drained, depleted soul, wondering how you will possibly find the strength to face another morning, because the healing virtue that flowed into you the moment you reached out to me has permanently sealed the fractures within your spirit. You are entirely whole, wrapped securely in the hem of my majestic garment, covered by a peace that transcends all human logic, all earthly anxieties, and all the residual fears that used to haunt your midnight hours, resting in the absolute assurance that the God who hung the stars in the vast expanse of the cosmos is the exact same God who is currently holding your fragile heart with infinite, meticulous care. As the deepest phases of restorative sleep finally wash over your physical body, gently pulling your consciousness down into a serene, undisturbed ocean of tranquility, I am speaking a final, irrevocable blessing over your tomorrow, ensuring that when the dawn breaks and the morning light filters through your window, you will awaken to a reality that feels entirely different than the one you left behind. The familiar, heavy dread that used to greet you the moment you opened your eyes has been permanently eradicated, replaced by a quiet, steady, and radiant joy. A profound lightness in your chest that comes from knowing that the invisible hemorrhage has been stopped and your spiritual reservoirs are finally overflowing with my limitless vitality. You will step into the new day, not as a victim of your circumstances, not as a casualty of your past exhaustion, but as a deeply beloved, miraculously restored child of the Most High, walking with a renewed, effortless strength that will absolutely baffle those who knew how entirely depleted you were just a few short hours ago. But before you cross completely over into the realm of dreams, as you lay here suspended in the perfect, healing stillness of this sacred encounter, I ask you to anchor your soul to the miracle that has just taken place, ensuring that this moment is not stolen by the fleeting nature of passing time. If you have felt the heavy, draining flow of your exhaustion finally come to a halt, if you have felt the undeniable warmth of my virtue entering your weary body, just as that desperate woman felt it so many centuries ago on the dusty roads of Capernaum, then I invite you to leave a physical, enduring mark of your faith in the gathering space of brethren below. Engrave your declaration into the foundation of this sanctuary, writing the words, "The bleeding has stopped, and I am finally whole," allowing that simple, powerful sentence to stand as a permanent, undeniable stone of remembrance, testifying to the exact night you reached out through the darkness and touched the hem of my grace. And if your weary soul desires to remain permanently tethered to this harbor of peace, if you wish to stay covered under the protective canopy of this fellowship, so that you never have to wander through the exhausting deserts of isolation again, then anchor your presence here, joining your spirit with the countless others who have also been pulled from the brink of total depletion. Make this holy space a continuous refuge for your mind, so that whenever the world attempts to drain you in the future, you will already be firmly established in the very place where my living water continuously flows, surrounded by a community of believers who understand the exact weight of the burdens you have laid down tonight. Look out into the spiritual landscape and realize that there are others still wandering in the blinding heat of their own exhaustion, people you know and love who are secretly bleeding out their hope, suffering in the same silent, agonizing isolation that you just escaped, wondering if anyone in the universe truly sees their pain. Do not leave them wandering in the dark, but extend the hem of this healing garment to them, casting this beacon of restorative light across the digital expanse, so that they too might hear the voice of the Father calling them out of the crowd, inviting them to lay down their heavy armor and find the exact same miraculous rest that is currently flooding your soul. But your work is completely finished tonight, my beloved child. Your heavy burdens have been successfully transferred into my capable hands, and the invisible wounds of your past have been perfectly, seamlessly stitched together by the master physician. There is nothing left for you to figure out, nothing left for you to calculate, and nothing left for you to fear, because the universe is resting securely in my grip, and you are resting securely in my heart. Let the quiet completely overtake you now, sinking down into the fathomless depths of my unconditional love, where the waters are perfectly still, the night is absolutely safe, and my watchful eyes never leave you for a single fraction of a second. You are entirely healed. You are deeply, eternally cherished. Go in peace, my beautiful child, and be forever freed from your suffering. Sleep now. I am holding you, and all is finally perfectly well.